All right, everybody, welcome to the podcast. This is your host, Eric, and you're listening to Voices from the Planet, says the guy with the radio voice. So this episode is going to be a solo episode. I plan to talk about a movie I recently watched called Hector and the Search for Happiness, starring Simon Pegg. Was released in 2014, directed by Peter Chelsom, and the screenplay writers were Marita von Helen, Peter Chelsom, Tinker Lindsay, and Francois Lelord. He wrote the novel that the movie was based on. And I'm recording this solo episode about the movie to take the place of a podcast I recorded with another podcast host, Michael Klein of the One by One podcast. So we actually recorded a whole podcast yesterday. And so I used this program and we talked about it. It's called MP3 Skype Recorder. It was pretty basic. I purchased it online for £7. It wasn't even US dollars. That should have been my first sign. But actually, the product works well. I used it on the one podcast I recorded with Neil Singh, and it worked fine. But I think what happened, this is totally my fault. I think what happened was when it's done recording, it gives you an option to move or copy the file. So I did that, but before I actually moved or copied it, I closed that window, inadvertently deleting the file, I believe. So we had an awesome hour and a half conversation, and it's just gone to the ether. So I apologize for that. It was a really good one. I was really looking forward to listening back to it and putting it out. But unfortunately, it's not meant to be. But have no fear. I will be recording another podcast with Michael Klein of the One by One podcast in the future. So stay tuned for that. But yeah, so in order just to have something to give out, I mean, I watched this movie like 3 times already since I first saw it, and it's a really good movie. Like I said, based on the novel Hector and the Search for Happiness. But so, yeah, let's see, where should I begin? Maybe I should just start at the beginning. So this movie is about a psychiatrist named Hector who is pretty much dissatisfied with his life. I guess has his structure and his day-to-day routine, which is fine, but I guess not living a passionate, fulfilling life, just going through the motions day to day. So that character is played by Simon Pegg. He has a girlfriend who's played by Rosamund Pike. So she's his girlfriend. So basically, let's just start at the beginning of the movie, I suppose. So it goes in the beginning, it's showing Hector and his life and showing with how he deals with his patients in his psychiatry practice and how he is just going through the motions basically day to day, not really there present, I guess I would say, for his patients. So he basically goes through a crisis, I guess, of self-worth, so actually I should say he does have a patient who he sees who is like a spiritual, I don't know, like a healer or seer. She has powers, but the reason she's coming to see him is because she's not actually been having the ability to see the future or read people's palms and do all that kind of stuff that she does. But she makes a comment to him about like how she can still say the things that the people need to hear and go through the motions, but she feels like a fraud. And I think at that point it kind of clicks for Hector that he's doing the same thing, and he's pretty much a fraud. So he decides that he needs to he decides what he's gonna do is he's gonna take a trip, and it's kind of inspired, I think, by the patient. Her name is Angeli, the clairvoyant, visionary healer, and I guess at one point she gets her abilities back. So she takes a look at Hector's palm, excuse me, and realizes that and says like, "You're gonna go on a journey," which is basically what she was saying, that she can tell people that as a generic answer, but she says that she sees him going on a journey and that he's gonna find peace and happiness and he'll be able to love like he's never loved before. And so I think it kind of just affirmed what he was already thinking. So he decides to take a trip, and he's gonna do some research so on the state of happiness, so that way he can better help his clients find happiness as well. And that's where the fun begins. So actually, hold on. So his first trip, he's gonna go to, and actually I gotta mention, so kind of to maybe give you an idea of the character. So he's very tidy, and he has all his new travel gear, the pants that convert into shorts, reversible hats, reversible jackets. He's got everything he needs. But so his girlfriend is kind of a little, it seems that she's a little jealous because while putting away his socks one day, she finds a picture in the sock drawer of him, a girl, and a guy, and those are his friends from college. So he's been hiding the picture from her, or maybe not intentionally, but he hasn't shown it to her, but she sees it, and I think she's feeling a little jealous. But so when they're packing, she makes a comment about like, you need more socks. You can never have too many socks. So she goes to his socks drawer to pull out a couple pairs of socks for him, and sees that the picture's gone, which basically is saying that he's taking the picture with him on his trip. And I think she gets a little jealous, so she's already thinking like, what's going on, you know what I mean? But she's supporting him. He's going on this trip to better himself so he can better serve his patients. So he first goes to China, and on the plane, so he gets on the plane, he's in his seat in coach, I guess, and he's sitting there, and another person comes up and they have that seat, so the airline double booked the seat, so they end up upgrading Hector to business class, where he meets the first person along his journey sitting next to him, and that is, sorry, hold on one second, I'm looking it up on IMDb so I can remember the characters' names because I don't have that good of a memory. But yeah, so he meets Edward, and Edward is a successful businessman, and that's where he gets his first rule. So the whole time in this movie, he's writing down in this book, his girlfriend gives him a journal, and he's but he's gonna be filling it in with his travel journal. And so the first one he writes down is, hold on, I probably should have been more prepared for this, sorry guys. So the first one sorry, I'm looking up on my phone as I'm doing this. First one is, making comparisons can spoil your happiness. And that's because the dude he's sitting next to, Edward, is not so happy that he's not in business class. He'd rather be in first class. Obviously, who wouldn't? Who wouldn't rather be in first class? But that is one of the rules. Making comparisons. Making comparisons can spoil your happiness. Yes. So maybe you'll feel unhappy because you're comparing business to first. So you're not happy because you're not in first. But business class is just as good. And Hector is more than excited to be in business class, being offered champagne, while Edward, sitting next to him, is not happy with the quality of the champagne. But anyway, so he meets Edward on the plane, and Hector, being the type of person he is, he's just really excited. There's this part where he accidentally knocks his champagne glass onto the ground and it doesn't break, and he's surprised by that. And the stewardess, or sorry, the flight attendant explains that the glasses are shatterproof. And so what he does next is he takes all the food off his plate and puts it on his tray and then drops his plate on the ground. Unfortunately, it breaks, but it's just kind of funny to show his character. Like, it's just like an excited child, really. So one of the next ones is, many people think happiness comes from having power and money, and that's where Edward comes in, because he's the personification of that. Because he's rich, he has power, he can do whatever he wants. So when they land in China, Hector accidentally steals Edward's pen from when they were on the plane. Like, he borrowed it and just forgot to give it back, and it's a reoccurring bit in this movie where he borrows pens. He never has a pen when he needs one, so he borrows pens and forgets to return them. So outside of the airport, I guess at outside the baggage claim where you get picked up, they're waiting there, and Edward realizes that Hector is just kind of has no clue about what he's doing or where he's going. And he realizes that Hector still has his pen, so he yells at him, "Hey, give me my pen, or you have my pen." Anyway, he ends up giving Hector a ride to his his hotel where he's staying, and in a limo, obviously, the symbol of power and money. So they're driving there, and he's making comments about the type of hotel Hector's staying at. Like, "You're staying at the Marriott? What? No, let me show you what the happiness money can buy." So Edward ends up taking Hector out for a night on the town in China. Takes him to eat fancy food. There's one scene where they're eating at the table, and it's this giant round table and has all kinds of food and shit on there. And they're sitting far across on opposite ends of the table eating. I mean, obviously they have so much food, I'm sure they're happy, but it's kind of a representation of the disconnect of people that have money, I think, because they're sitting so far apart, yet they're sitting at the same table, sharing a meal together. But anyway, so they go out end up going to a club where, I mean, obviously Hector is out of place. Edward is right at home. So Hector is sitting at a table having a drink or whatever, and he's looking in his notebook and he's writing stuff in there. And this beautiful Asian woman comes up and sits next to him and starts talking to him and, asking about what he's doing, and they get into a real conversation and they hit it off. And apparently, so she's a student there studying tourism, and Hector's like, "Hey, what a coincidence. I'm a tourist." And there's all these coincidences, like, so they talk and have a good time at the club, and they're drinking and partying or whatever. So they end up going home. And so in the taxi on the way back to Hector's hotel, they're sharing a cab, and he makes a comment about he'd like it if she would come back with him to his hotel. And she says, "Well, where are you staying?" And he tells her, "At the Marriott." And she says, "Well, what a coincidence. I'm also staying at the Marriott." So they get there, they go upstairs. They're gonna do it, I guess. It appears as if they're gonna do it. She goes into the bathroom to change. She comes out dressed in a bathrobe and takes it off, and Hector is asleep. So too exhausted to even make it with the hot girl. So she ends up just sleeping next to him. He wakes up in the middle of the night, sees her naked body in his bed next to him, and he covers her up, and then changes out of his clothes that he passed out in and goes back to sleep, and that's it. Nothing happens. That's where he writes down, where was it? It was number 5, but he crossed it out. But it was, happiness may be the ability to love more than one woman at a time. And I guess at the moment that's how he was feeling. He loved his girlfriend Clara, who lived back home, but he was also falling for this beautiful Asian student here in China. So he makes plans to meet up with her the next day for lunch, and she's gonna show him around. So they end up meeting, and I mean, he's happy to see her and she's happy to see him, and they're eating lunch. And then all of a sudden, the man in the moped pulls up, and he's pissed. He's pissed at the girl. And he starts yelling at her in Chinese and telling her to come. So she's like leaving Hector, and he's like, wait a minute, what's going on? And the man tells him, your friend, he paid for last night. Who's paying for today? So that's when you find out, oh fuck, the girl was a hooker. And his friend Edward paid the hooker to get with Hector to show him a good time. And then that's where the next rule comes in, and it says happiness sometimes is not knowing the whole truth. There you go. All right, so from, I think that was in Shanghai, maybe he was in like a big city in China. So from there he ends up leaving and traveling to a monastery, Buddhist monastery, up somewhere in the high mountains. They didn't really specify. I think it wasn't like he was in Tibet. It didn't mention like he's traveled from China to Tibet or anything, but they show him taking a long train ride and then a bus ride and then hiking up these, crazy monastery stairs to get to the thing. And he gets up to the monastery and knocks on the door, and a young monk opens the door and says, it's Monday, we're closed, come back tomorrow. Shuts the door in his face. Like, okay. Knocks again. Hector knocks again. He says, what part of Monday don't you understand? We're closed. And he leaves, and then you hear another man shouting in Chinese from behind the door. And then an older monk comes out and, explains to Hector, apologizes to Hector, and explains that he's a young monk and he's new, so he doesn't really know or understand or get it all yet. So, but he invites Hector in. He comes in, and Hector's there. So, and then it's just his time there, and he has like a few talks with the Buddhist monk while they're setting up the satellite dish on top of the monastery, and talking about like the pursuit of happiness and the search for happiness. And sometimes where was it? It was like trying to avoid unhappiness is not a successful path to happiness. It's a mistake to think that happiness is a goal. In the movie, these are the ones, I'm reading them off from the ones from the book, but in the movie is a little different. But it was more along the lines of that happiness. You shouldn't make happiness the goal, because it's not always what you're going for. It's also what you're avoiding. And if you're avoiding unhappiness, Buddhist teachings tend to tend to tell you that you will experience unhappiness in your pursuit to avoid unhappiness. So he's with the monk there and finds out the monk has Skype. I don't know, it's weird how they came across it, and they're just like, just call us, we have Skype. You can just call us next time. But so he realizes they have Skype, so he goes and he calls his girlfriend Clara, as they say in there. I don't know, with my American accent I'm probably just gonna say Clara. But so he calls her, and that was like the first time they've talked since he left. And so yeah, and then as they're having their Skype chat, the winds are picking up in the mountains, so the satellite dish gets knocked off the roof and it cuts their call. And at that same time, the older monk comes in and calls for Hector and is trying to tell him like, come, you have to see this, the winds. So they go out of the monastery and go up, to where they have all the prayer flags flying in the wind, and all the monks are there, and they are, like just ecstatic with joy and like dancing, or I guess it's like a slow motion thing, so I don't know, they could have just been spinning around, but I assume that they were dancing by the way it looked. So they're just enjoying the moment, being completely present up there as the winds come to flap and flutter all the prayer flags that they have strung up. And then he makes a comment to Hector that it's all of them. It's all of them. And Hector's confused by that, but he sees that all these monks are just so happy to be there in that moment. Yeah, I mean, I don't even know if I'm doing a good job explaining this shit. If you guys watch the movie, you'll probably get it better. I'm just trying to explain from what I can remember. I don't really have notes. I didn't take any notes in the movie. I'm looking it up online on my phone. I have the list of the rules for happiness, and then I also have the IDMB site up so I can look at the actors' names and stuff and see who was in what. yeah, so from there, from where he was at the monastery, his next trip is going to be Africa. Like I don't in the beginning, I mentioned he had that picture with his two friends, a guy and a girl. One of the friends in the picture is a guy named Michael that he was went to school with, who's now working at a medical clinic in Africa. So he travels to Africa to spend time with Michael and to help him at the clinic for a couple weeks and help out with that. So he there's the so well, actually go back a little. So he is at the airport and getting checked into his flights to Africa, and the desk clerk is explaining to him, like, this is 4 flights, this is 2 days of travel, and Hector's excited. He's like, yeah, I know, let's do it. She's like, let me explain. She goes, so here's first class, and she puts her hand like way up above her head. She said, here's business class. She moves it down a little. Here's coach. She moves that down a little. And then she goes all the way down to the floor and says, this is you. And Hector doesn't give a shit. He's down. He's happy. He's ready to go see his friend Michael in Africa. Cut to the plane. This is where in the movie they did something that was pretty funny. It's like a little like model airplane with like cardboard clouds and like fake like cardboard lightning, and they just are filming that to depict the plane flying, and then they cut to in the plane, and it's them, the actors and stuff. But on that plane, it's a crazy stormy flight, and it's like, oh shit, they're not gonna make it. On the plane ride, he's sitting next to this woman, and she is saying, like, look at this plane, it's really old. That means it hasn't crashed, so that's probably a good sign. And so he starts talking to her about what makes her happy, and she's saying, her family, and knowing that her kids can grow up and not have to have bodyguards when they go to school and all that stuff, and just, I guess, being peaceful with your loved ones. And also sweet potato stew. And she asks him, have you ever had sweet potato stew? And he says no. She says, okay, so once a week all her family comes over to their place, and they have a big party and dance and sing, and they make sweet potato stew. So she invites Hector to come over. And then they land successfully. Well, actually, she makes that comment, like, if we land and don't crash, come to this address when we do this. And so they land successfully. He is met at the airport by his friend Michael, who's there working at the clinic, and takes him and shows him around. And they're just talking about, like, what the situation is like there, how they're not getting funding. And Hector's asking, like, but we donate money to these charitable causes, and they're explaining how a lot of that money doesn't actually leave the cities and ever make it out to the smaller villages that need it. So, and that's what Michael's there to do. He's trying to help these villages by offering free medical care, and Hector is there to help out. So as they're driving there, he gets dropped off at the hotel. Hector gets dropped off at his hotel in the city, and I don't know. I don't even care. It doesn't matter what city it is. It's a city in Africa. I don't know. I don't even know if they named it in the movie. But so he gets dropped off, and at his hotel, there's like a bar, so he goes and sits down at the bar and gets a beer, and he starts talking to this gentleman. And they don't. So, like, I'm not gonna say who the characters name it, because it comes kind of as a surprise as like who he is. So he ends up sitting next to this guy and starts having a conversation with them, and this guy starts like accusing him of being with like the news organizations or somebody trying to figure out who he is. So he like jumps Hector and like slams him to the bar, and is like checking to see if he has a wire, or like, who are you? He's asking him all that, and Hector's explaining, no, I'm just a psychiatrist, and da 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 da. I'm researching what makes people happy. So the dude at the bar lets him go, and he's sitting there with Hector, and they're talking more about stuff, and he's asking him, like, what makes you happy? And he explains, or he asks, like, what he does, like, what this man is there in Africa for. And he just says that he's a farmer. That's it. And then Hector is like, oh, okay, farmer. And explains what he's doing there, helping for the week. And the guy's kind of skeptical, like, what's in it for you, Hector? And Hector's just like, you don't know, I'm just doing it to do it because I want to help people. And the man at the bar is very skeptical and doesn't think anybody ever does anything just to do it. There's always something in it for him. So he doesn't believe. So they continue talking about what makes him happy, and how can you be happy if the the products you're farming in quotations is contributing to the unhappiness of others. And the man justifies it by saying, like, we're just supplying the demand. And like, same thing like Hector does, he helps people in that way. So this man thinks he's helping people by providing these farmed whatever products. Obviously he's a drug dealer, but so but the man at the bar ends up saying that, like, what makes him happy is when his wife is happy, and his wife isn't happy, and then that makes his kids unhappy. And so how can he be happy if his family's not happy? And he goes on to explain, like, the man at the bar's wife sees a psychiatrist, and he gave her some new pills, and it's kind of fucking her up. Like, she doesn't seem like her normal self, so that's causing a lot of the stress and unhappiness. And then Hector, being a psychiatrist, offers him to, like, let me take a look at the prescriptions of what she's taking and see if I can help or whatever. So he's just kind of like, okay. So they leave the bar, and then the next morning Hector's waiting for Michael to pick him up, and this man comes back in and gives Hector what prescriptions his wife was given. And Hector, like, is looking at it, he's like, I don't know about these dosages, and these two pills she's taking are clashing, and blah 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 blah. So he writes up a new prescription, and again, so he didn't have a pen, so he borrowed this man's pen to write down the prescription. So he gives him a new prescription and says, give it to your wife, here's my phone number, call me, let me know how she's doing, and once she starts taking these other ones, blah 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 blah. And then as they're talking there, Michael, Hector's friend, comes in, and he's like, all right, we gotta go, kind of like with a sense of urgency. And as they're walking to the car outside of the hotel, Michael's asking him, like, what are you doing talking to that guy? Do you know who that is? And he's like, no. Hector's like, no. And Michael's like, that's Diego Barrasco. He's the type of person who's dragging Africa to shit. And like, that's not the type of people you should be talking to. And that's when we were like, oh fuck, he's a gangsta, you know what I'm saying, like a drug lord. And then Hector realizes, oh fuck, I took his pen. Oh, again, I took a drug lord's pen. He's gonna end up killing me. So yeah, continuing on, they make it to the clinic, and Hector's there, and he's helping a little with the actual, like helping the people with, like, injuries and stuff, but he's kind of there to also help just with everybody feeling better. So he's with a young boy and just kind of there to make him laugh and all that kind of stuff. And then what was the next rule that came out of that one was, hold on, that one was, happiness is being with people who love you. Oh no, that's not the one. I'm sorry. Hold on. Wow, they really skipped a lot from what's in the movie and what's in the book. It's a lot different. So, happiness is to be loved for exactly who you are, and that's what Michael is experiencing there, because he's, we didn't really talk about it, but he's gay, so people don't give a shit because he's helping people and he's answering his calling. And yeah. Wait, hold on. I'm gonna pause this for 1 second. Okay. Sorry, I'm back. Shit, damn it. Oh yeah, happiness is answering your calling, and happiness is being loved for who you are. So that's the story. That's the insight he gets from his friend Michael. Fuck, I'm gonna have to go in and edit a lot of these, like, pauses and these and me looking at shit. Actually, you'll probably just leave it in. Fuck it, I'm lazy. Alright. So at that point, he's able to get on another call with Clara back in England. And she's, he's excited to talk to her, but she's actually planning on going out for the night. And he's kind of freaked out by that, like, going out. And, she shows him a new dress, and he's kind of like, oh, that's a new dress. And the doorbell rings in the background, and she immediately just like, oh, I gotta go, and disconnects the call. And he's like, what the fuck, going out? So he, tit for tat, he goes out to the house where he was invited by the lady on the plane to go try their sweet potato stew. So he goes and does that night and parties, and he's having a good time. And so that's number 10 is sweet potato pie makes you happy, or the rules for happiness. Number 10 is sweet potato pie. So at the end of the party, he's feeling good. He's gonna get a ride back home, and he jumps into a car with these two guys, and it's like has a cardboard taxi sign on the top of it. So they're giving him a ride home, and he passes out in the back seat. And as they're driving, they pull up to this like a security checkpoint or something, but it's like really shady looking, and it's these two guys there with machine guns and fucking. So they're talking to the driver and the passenger, and Hector's passed out in the back, and they end up like pulling out their guns and getting the driver and the passenger out of the car. They tie them up and take their clothes, their normal street clothes, and then jump in the car and take the car, and not realizing that Hector was sleeping in the back. So he slowly wakes up, is coming to, and he offers them some candy, and those two guys are like, what the fuck? And then he realizes that it's not the same two guys that he left with, and he's freaking out like, what the fuck? So they end up taking him to this place where they throw him in like a jail cell, but it's like a dungeon. I don't know where it is, but it's he doesn't know where it is, and it's just some crazy place where he's locked in a cage, and he's like, it's like days and days are going by and nobody's coming to talk to him, and he's kind of freaking out. And so eventually the guys who kidnapped him pull him out, and they take him to see their leader, who is like making jokes about the things that he was writing in his notebook about happiness and stuff like that. And so they're gonna kill Hector, but Hector tells them like, like I know nobody's gonna come looking for me, but I'm trying to help a friend, and if he's gonna call me, and if he doesn't get in touch with me, he's gonna be very concerned, and he's not the type of person you want as an enemy. And these guys are like, well, he's like, even if it's the fucking president, like, it's not gonna fucking help you. And Hector says, it's not the president, it's Diego Barrasco. And the men kind of all freak out. They kind of get quiet, like, oh fuck, Diego Barrasco, oh shit. But so he tells Hector, prove it, and Hector breaks down again. He's like, I can't prove it, man. Whatever. So they end up dragging him back to the cell where he was at, and they're gonna kill him. And he's saying, the guy is questioning, like, what are you doing here? And he's like, I'm here to research happiness. And he pulls the trigger on the gun, but it, empty chamber. So he has like a revolver. He's like, really, what are you doing here? I'm trying to find out what makes people happy. He's like freaking out. Click, another bullet, blank. And he's freaking out like, what the fuck? So he ends up saying like, I know you're gonna kill me, but because what he's there is to find out what makes people happy. He asks the leader like, what makes you happy? What is it that I forget what the fuck his answer was. But from all this, Hector realizes that fear is an impediment to happiness. When you're afraid, you can't be happy. But he says, I forget what the guy says. Fuck, whatever. But Hector asks him if he could have his notebook so he could write it down in there for posterity and do that. And so the guy's like, fuck, whatever. So he gives him his book back. And Hector's looking through his pockets, and he doesn't have a pen. He's like, what the fuck? Again, without the fucking pens, Hector. So he says, he asked one of the guys for the pen, and they kick over a pen on the floor, and it rolls over to Hector, and it's this golden pen. And he's going to go write it in the book, and he looks at the pen, and it's Diego Barrasco's pen, and it has his like name engraved on it or whatever, like his gold pen. So he says to the guys who are holding him captive, like, can I just have one last request, just one last thing, please? He says, would one of you guys make sure my friend gets his pen back? And he holds up the pen and says whose pen it is, and they look at it like, what the fuck? So they end up throwing him in a car and just like dropping him off on the side of this dirt road and like leaving him there. And he's like walking back. He's trying to find somebody, and he ends up walking back to the village where he had the sweet potato stew. And so the next one is happiness is feeling completely alive, because faced with what you perceive to be certain death, I'm sure you will never feel more alive than after that moment, walking out of there free. I mean, relatively speaking, unharmed. He was a little bust up, but he, wasn't dead, which is great, right? Um, so from there, he ends up, and I guess after that, he has a conversation with, he calls Clara again, once he gets back, and I'm assuming it's been like days, maybe like a week since when he got kidnapped from when he was released. So he calls her up on Skype from like the town in wherever he is, and he tells her, I was kidnapped, and she kind of doesn't seem like that worried, and she's just like, oh well, what, and she's kind of just freaking out. Like, it just didn't seem like she really gave a fuck, and I think Hector knew that, and like, it's just a weird conversation, and it was awkward, and she ends up spilling her coffee, and she's like blames it on him, even though he's in Africa over Skype. But anyway, so they end up like getting off that phone call, not too happy with each other, and she asks him like, where is he going next, and he tells her he doesn't know. She gets pissed off about that and hangs up, and then he sees his friend Michael, and he's like, so where are you going next? And he knows where he's going. He's going to the Los Angeles. He's going to go see the third person in the picture. The third person in the picture that he had in his sock drawer, that he was keeping secret from his wife. But he's going to see Agnes, who is also his friend. She lives in California. So his lost love, I guess they used to love each other. So on the plane ride there, he buys a first class ticket. So he gets to sit in first class, and it's pretty empty. It's just him and another lady who looks like a complete biatch. But so they're on the plane. They're flying from Africa to LA or wherever. Anyway, but there's the pilot comes over the speaker and is asking if there's a doctor on the plane and if they could come see the flight crew. They have a medical emergency. So he goes back to like the coach section, and there's this woman there, and she's like, she looks fucked up. Like, she's breathing heavy. She's like looking very pale. She looks really sick, and she's just not doing good. And he's asking you like, it's the 1 to 10 scale of pain, and she's at like a 9. So she has some medical records, so he takes a look at it, and apparently what had happened was this woman had a brain tumor removed recently, and flying in the plane, the altitude was putting a lot of pressure on her brain. So Hector realizes this, and he asks the pilot if it would be possible to fly at a lower altitude and all this stuff, and they do. So it helps the lady, and Hector brings her up to first class to sit in his seat and kind of take care of her, and he takes off. It was a Middle Eastern woman, a Muslim lady, so she had like the head scarf on and a wig. So he takes that off, and you see the huge scar on her head where she had the tumor removed. And then like, the whole time, that other lady who was sitting there in first class, the biatch, was fucking looking like, what the fuck. But so they're flying there, and then Hector and this woman start talking. I don't remember her name. Doesn't matter. We'll skip it. We'll skip her. So they're just flying and talking, and she's saying how she's flying to LA to see her sister, and probably going to be the last time she's going to end up seeing her, because she's going to die soon. I guess they removed the tumor, but the cancer was still spreading, so that's why she got on the plane, even though she probably shouldn't have, because she just wanted to go see her sister one last time before she died. And so she's talking about her family, and they're just talking story, and they land in LA, and she gets she's out there, show her getting wheeled away on a stretcher to an ambulance, and Hector tells the medics that to take her to this address instead of the hospital, and I guess the address he gave was probably the sister's address. So take her there first, don't take her to the hospital. She's here to see her thing. But what the rule for that one was that he came up with is, well, she tells it to him. She says listening is loving, and because he wasn't he's not really a medical doctor, but he knows enough. So she was saying like, you're really good at what you do, and he's like, it's not my field. And she says, no, you misunderstand. Listening is loving. It cannot be more true. Just to offer a listening ear to a friend, or somebody in need, could make all the difference. Sometimes people just want to unload their shit, and just to have somebody who's there to listen while they unload, it can be a blessing to that person. So I'm sure Yeah, that's what that one was. Listening is loving. And then so he gets to LA and he meets Agnes, and she's pregnant with her third kid. She has two kids already. She's happily married. But what we find out is Hector might have been holding a torch for her all this time and wanted to see, like, what could have been. But while he's there in LA, well, he gets a call from Clara, and it's like the not good call. Like they're gonna break up on this call pretty much. And so she's freaking out about him being in LA with that skank, and she's pissed off at him, and he says some things about her and her job, and they're just going back and forth attacking each other. And then so that's pretty much it. They hang up and they're broken up, and he freaks out and then he throws his phone into the bushes at Agnes's house where he's staying. And then his phone rings again, so he thinks it's Clara, so he goes and digs through the bushes to grab it, and he pulls out his phone and he's like, oh my god, I'm so sorry. And then it's not Clara, it's Diego Barasco, and the first thing he says is, where's my fucking pen? And he has it, so he's like, I have your pen, blah blah blah. So he's asking about how the wife's doing, and he tells Diego Barasco tells him that the wife's doing a lot better. They took the prescription that Hector gave, and she's like a brand new person, and she's happy, and her kids are happy, and he's happy. And so Diego asks Hector what was the name of his friend's clinic in Africa, because he wants to make a donation anonymously, obviously. Come on. Anyway, oh, no rhyme there. But and so Hector asks him like, oh, what's in it for you? And Diego says nothing. And then this is a funny part. And then so Hector's like, oh yeah, good man, good man. And Diego says, fuck you, and he hangs up. But some people don't want the recognition sometimes for doing a good deed, just they want to just make the contribution and move on. So at that point, Hector is broken up with Clara. He's there with Agnes and her family, and she's also a psychologist working with this doctor who is like doing brain research on happiness. So they show them on the way there to go see this guy that Agnes works for. He is talking to Agnes about it, like, what could have been. I wonder what could have been. And she's like, what the fuck? So she kind of flips out on him about like this whole putting people up on a pedestals and holding flames. It's not fair. Like holding on to an idea of people the way they are or whatever. And so she says, I'm really having a hard time not to use the words move on. She's happy. Like, why would Hector do that to her now? She has 3 kids, or she has 2 kids. She has a third one on the way. And she's pretty much like happy with her life. She has a husband she loves. She has a job she loves, and she doesn't need Hector coming in and fucking all that shit up with his fantasies about what could have been. Like she says, like, what about what is right now? Like that's what's most important. So they end up having that little argument, but they still are going to go see the man Agnes works for, Professor Corman, and so they walk in on him, and it's he's giving like a college lecture. He's like a college professor. So he's talking to the class, and he's saying how like everything is on the rise in today's society, and but happiness is on the decline. And he asks, like, I wonder how many people could actually think back to a childhood memory or a time in their life when they were like completely happy, as in like this, like as a state of happiness, and completely present in the moment and all that stuff. And it's true, like, can you really think back to when you as a child or whatever were just like completely happy with whatever was going on in the moment? And his basically goes on about his speech and all this stuff, and basically he says like we shouldn't be so much concerned about the pursuit of happiness. We should be more concerned with the happiness of the pursuit. So like happiness is not necessarily the goal. The goal is to just do, and happiness will come. Just enjoy the ride, I guess, man. Cool hippie stoner shit. So they end up going to meet they go to talk to the professor, and he's developed this like brain helmet that attaches or reads like the specific parts of the brain where different emotions are, um, I guess, firing in your synapses. So he has the girl, Agnes, go in and put it on, and he tells her to think of three different. Hey, my son's waking up. Hey, bud, am I being too loud? Yeah. So think of three memories: happy, sad, scared, in any order, and he's going to guess based on that. So what he did was he mapped out the parts of the brain that will produce these memories or these feelings, and he assigned a different color to it: yellow for happy, blue for sad, and green for fear. So she goes in real quick, comes back out, and he tells her like, you're such an open book, and blah blah blah, these were the three. And she's like, yep, you got it. And then he's like, Hector, your turn. And Hector's like, oh, I don't think I want. He's like, nope, Hector, get in there. So they have Hector go in, and he puts on the helmet, and they explain again, three things that make you happy, sad, and scared, whatever order they're gonna guess it. So he gets in there, and so in the movie he puts on the thing, and he's kind of wincing, trying to like think of the memories. And so the first one, he starts getting the flashbacks of when he was in that being held captive in Africa, and you see the little bits of the on the computer screen, a little bit of it brightening up, and the professor and Agnes are talking about it, and they're like, he seems to be like filtering his emotions and blah 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 blah. And so like they're like, he needs to dig deeper, and like, you know what I mean. And he's thinking, they cut back to Hector, and they're showing more of what he's like, the flashbacks of the memories and the visualizations he's seeing when he's trying to recall these memories. And they cut back to the guys, and it's showing like the green and the blue and that kind of stuff. And he's like, wait, he looks at it like, this isn't the emotions of a grown man, these are the emotions of a child. And they're talking about Hector, and he needs to go deeper, and I was like, I don't know if they can, and da, 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 da. And so they forget that they leave the microphone on, and Hector from inside the booth is like, I can hear you guys, and I think I can go deeper. And they're like, oh fuck, we left the mic on. So yeah, they're like, yeah, go deeper. So they goes deeper, and he's in there, and what he's visualizing is like a wedding, and it's his girlfriend Clara as the bride. And as it comes closer, you can see that the dude she's marrying is actually her boss from work. And Hector's there, and he's in the dream, and he's holding this little dog, and it's supposed to be, I'm assuming, like his inner child, because they showed that scene earlier, like other parts, but it was a little boy with the dog, so that's like Hector, but maybe it's his inner child. So he sees that, and then his phone starts ringing, and it's Clara, and they're apologizing, they're talking about it, and he's like, I'm so sorry I said those things. And what really makes him the most fearful is to not be with her, and what would make him the most happiest is knowing that he could be the man that she needs him to be. And they're having like this emotional connection and breakdown over the phone, and the professor and Agnes are watching it on the screen as it's happening, and like all the colors are going bright yellow, bright green, bright blue, all at the same time, and the fear. And he's talking about, is this like a good thing? When he's on the phone with Agnes, they're talking about like, is it a good thing that we're having this call? And he's like, yeah, I think it is, but it's also so scary. And they're laughing, and they're crying, and saying how much they love each other, and how much they've missed each other, and all these emotions and are flooding in. And it's like pretty crazy. Like they're showing all the flashbacks from the girl in China, the getting captive, with parting with the people in Africa, helping the kids in Africa, helping the lady on the plane to LA, all this stuff, and like all these that are generating all these emotions. And the professor's outside is like, whoa, this is like crazy, he's never seen anything like it. And she's like, Agnes is like, what? And he's like, it's all of them, like all of them. And then they cut back to when Hector was in that monastery up on the mountains, when those monks pulled him outside to check it out. And when they cut back, and then he says, they cut back to the monk saying, it's all of them. And it's like instantly clicks, like, holy fuck, like maybe what I interpreted clicked for me was that like ultimate happiness is being able to be present and feel every emotion. I mean, you take the lessons that he talked about throughout the movie, and the different things when he met the monk, and how avoiding unhappiness is not the path to happiness. And it's like maybe happiness is taking the good, the bad, the scary, everything, and just being completely present and able to feel all of that. It was, yeah, like, it's so weird. Like, now I'm such a crybaby at movies. Like, the first time I watched it maybe was a couple weeks ago, and definitely at that part when Hector and Clara were having their last conversation while he was in the booth about getting back together and being together. Like, I was bawling, man. I was crying. I guess, I mean, I don't know what it is. I'm just such a crybaby for movies now. But so it's actually yesterday I watched it again, like in the morning, and then again later in the afternoon with my wife, and like just even leading up to that part, I knew already. I was like, fucking shit. I know I'm gonna start crying, and I already started tearing up before the part even happened, just like in anticipation of the emotions I knew that I was gonna be feeling when that part came on, and I was like, oh fuck. But it's a really good movie. So he ends up going back and getting married to Clara, and they end up staying together and all that stuff. So it was a really good movie. So I'm gonna, it felt like such like a letdown at the end there, the way I just said, yeah, it's a really good movie. No, it's a really good movie. Like, if you like these kind of things, I mean, check it out. It's on Netflix. That's where I watched it. Hector and the Search for Happiness. So I'm gonna run through the rules, and these are the ones from the movie. The book, I didn't read the book, honestly. I'm probably not gonna read the book, but I saw online that there are like way more than what's in the movie, but the ones in the movie were pretty good, and I'll read them off, and then I'll just kind of go and give a reminder of, like, I guess, we'll see. So the first rule was making comparisons can spoil your happiness. And actually, when I saw that one, it definitely reminded me of like a Tao, something from the Tao Te Ching. I guess like a Taoist principle is that if you constantly compare and compete, you can never truly be yourself. And to me, being able to be truly authentic and be your true self is also something that can lead to happiness as well. If you're constantly faking just to be better than somebody, or you're comparing yourself and saying that person's better than me, then you'll never truly be happy. So just be yourselves, guys. Just be that authentic you. Number 2 is, a lot of people think happiness means being richer or more important, and that's not always true. I mean, some people, they might be outwardly happy. You see, like, the rich billionaires, and they have smiles on their face, but you never know what's lurking under the surface. In this movie, that was Edward, the rich, successful businessman, and like, it's just, you work all the time. When do you actually get to enjoy the money you spent and truly be happy with people who love you and stuff like that? This dude was always on the road, traveling for business, partying with people he doesn't know, and to some people, that on surface, that might seem like that could be a happy life, but it seems really unfulfilling, because how many true friends and loved ones in your life do you have? Number 3 is, many people only see happiness in their future. I don't even think I mentioned that one in this earlier, but I think what that one means is that, like, you only think like, I'll be happier in the future if, and it actually makes me think of Ram Dass, I'll be happy when I blah blah blah, and then once you do that, then the next thing is, I'll be happy when blah 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 blah. There's always, what's the next thing is gonna be happy out. You only see happiness in your future. Being present in the moment is true. Being able to be happy in the present moment is true happiness. Not worrying about what next external force is gonna grant you your happiness, I guess. The next one was, happiness could be the freedom to love more than one woman at the same time. Not true. It's crossed out. I don't know how many people out there, I mean, it can't be, that's got to be so stressful trying to balance to juggle 2 women. One woman is hard enough. Having 2, it just seems like a fucking nightmare. And hence the reason that one is crossed out, because it is not, you will not find happiness spreading your love between two women. Then and that leads us to the next one. Number 5 was sometimes happiness is not knowing the whole story. Um, Ignorance is bliss, right? But I think better to know the whole story and deal with that than to be living in a world of lies. Because eventually those lies will come crashing down, and how happy will you be then? You know what I'm saying? Okay, next one. Avoiding unhappiness is not the road to happiness. I talked about that one already, but that's very, Buddhist philosophy. Your aversion to things and attachment to things tend to lead to more suffering. And number 7 is, this one was actually brought up by the lady on the plane on the flight to Africa, and that's does the person bring you predominantly up or down? So you take a look at the people in your life. Do they make you happy? Do they make you sad? Do they make you angry? Like, you gotta look and see, like, what these people do for you emotionally. Do they make you feel better about yourself? And if they're not, if they're dragging you down, then maybe better to just let go of them. I mean, you don't want to have negative people sucking all your positivity out of your life, right? You want to be happy. You want people to be happy when you're happy. If I love seeing people happy, so I wouldn't want to have negative Nancy's in my life all the time. I want people who will uplift and encourage and support. And so that's the type of people that I surround myself with, is positive people. I mean, and not to say that everybody doesn't have their moments. I mean, I'm definitely one who has some low points and gets upset and gets angry and stressed and frustrated. But it's funny, I was listening to a Ram Dass talk on the Be Here Now podcast. And it's the whole concept of like the watcher and, the ego and all this stuff. And it's not that you're frustrated or angry. It's that there is frustration and anger. Like the higher self doesn't feel these emotions. It's witnessing the ego work through these emotions. And if you can kind of step back and realize that, like, I'm not angry, I'm not sad, but there is sadness. Maybe you can develop a way to kind of work with that and heal that and be present for that. And again, being present, fully present in any moment is a great source of happiness, whether it is happy, sad, scary, whatever. I mean, I'm sure when you got a gun to your head, the last thing you're thinking about is peace of mind that, I'm present in this moment. But that's where you want to strive to be, right? Next one is happiness is answering your calling. So whatever it is that you feel you were put here to do, if you're doing it, that will make you happy. So find out what you're here for. What are you good at? What are you gonna contribute to the world, and do it. Like Nako says, find your medicine and use it. Get out there and do that shit, man. Next one. That was weird. Sorry. I don't know why I said that. Next one is happiness. Happiness is being loved for who you are, and that's very true. If you have people judging you, or saying you should be this way or you should be a certain way, like, that's gotta lead to a lot of unhappiness, because you'll never feel like you're good enough in so-and-so's eyes or whatever. But when you find the people in your life who completely accept you and love you and never judge you and all that stuff, like, it just makes you feel so much better about who you are, and that you can truly be who you are, which will lead to your happiness, because you can just be who you are without fear of being judged or ridiculed or whatever, ostracized by your community. If you could just be accepted by who you are, for who you are. And that is, it's totally true. Totally true. The next one is, and this one is, I think, maybe just from the movie and the book, it's sweet potato pie. Number 10. Sweet potato pie is one of the rules for happiness. All right, moving on from that one. I've never tried. No, I'm sorry. Wait. Hold on. Okay, sorry. In this and I don't know what I've been saying as I was telling this part of the movie, but on this list it says sweet potato pie. In the movie, it was sweet potato stew. I've had sweet potato pie. I'm not a huge fan, but I've never tried sweet potato stew before, and maybe it's happiness in a pot. Who knows? But yeah, so I forget what I said. I might have said pie earlier, but in the movie, it's sweet potato stew. Number 11, fear is an impediment to happiness. So then that's the part where he's locked up and like, yeah, if you're afraid, how can you be happy? If you're fearing for your life, I guess, how can you be happy unless you're like some ultra zen monk and like, got your neck to the sword and can still find peace in that moment? Then yeah, but um how many of us can actually say we live without fear, and not even the fear of our own like demise, just like the fear if I'm gonna get my bills paid, the fear of whatever. Like, yeah, I mean, it's hard not to have fears, but I guess letting go of all those fears and could definitely be rule for happiness, and just letting go of all like your fears, doubts, and insecurities, all that shit, all the negative feelings you have would probably be beneficial to your happiness. Number 12. Happiness is feeling completely alive. I mean, does that really need explanation? I think that's true. Number 13, listening is loving. Again, I talked about that one earlier when I was going through the thing, and I think that's a really good one too, is just being there, being available to listen to people, especially people you love. If you can just offer them, an ear to listen, you don't necessarily have to have all the answers for them or give them the roadmap to fix their problems, but even just being a friend to listen is really, really important to a lot of people who don't have that. Maybe a lot of people out there feel like they have no one to talk to. Or even on that's the other hand, maybe they are afraid to talk to people. I suggest seeing somebody to talk to if you don't have anybody in your life, to just so that you can express yourself freely without judgment. um, yeah, get out there, just talk to people, listen to people, let them talk to you. And then last one is nostalgia is not what it used to be. That one is really interesting to me. I think nostalgia is not what it used to be, because the way you remember things from your past, it's not. There's no way it's the same. I mean, your memories change. You get older. You forget. You replace memories, and I mean, it's been proven that like the human memory isn't necessarily the most reliable thing, and that's very true. I'm a testament of that. I have a shit memory, but the things that you remember, the way, if when people say like, "Oh, I wish I could go back to this way," or "I wish I could go back to when it was whatever," I don't really think you do. If you actually went back and were able to see how it really was, you'd probably be happier not back there. And everything that has led us up to the points in our life where we are right now is the way it is for a certain reason. So there's no sense in going back and trying to relive those things. You can have the memories and stuff, but there's no point in going back. Like, and in this case, it was a woman that he used to love and was holding a torch for, holding a flame in his heart for all that time. But yeah, nostalgia is not what it used to be. Number 14. So that's the list from the movie. That's pretty much it. So yeah, I really like this movie. I'll probably watch it again. But yeah, that's it, I guess, for now. I hope you guys enjoyed this podcast. I know it's weird with just me talking here for an hour. I'm actually surprised I went this long and I was able to keep it up. Again, sorry for all the pauses and and I'm looking this up stuff. But I was not prepared. I mean, I was prepared to do this because I watched the movie and I kind of knew what I wanted to talk about. But when it came to like remembering characters' names and all that kind of stuff, I had to look it up. So forgive me for that. I hope you guys enjoyed this, and we'll be back next time. I don't know. I don't want to say next week because we'll see. We are taking a trip, so there's going to be a little break. Maybe I'll record some podcasts while we're in the mainland. Taking a trip to Nicole's cousin is getting married in Ohio, and then we're going to take a trip up to Wisconsin and see my parents. But yeah, so we'll be back later with another podcast, and hopefully we'll have a good one. I'm gonna try and get back on with Michael from One by One, and hopefully we can re-record that episode and recapture some of the magic that happened on that first call. Yeah, I was super disappointed that happened, because I thought it was a really good one. I would have been really proud to put that one out, but fuck, shit happens, so that one's gone. But this one is here for you guys, and I'm making it up with a completely solo episode. So yeah, thank you guys again for checking out the podcast. I'll see you guys next time. Peace.